In a sterile, dimly lit chamber, the hum of the cryo-freezing machines echoed through the silence. Inside a glass tube, frozen in time, lay the last of humanity's greatest warriors. His name was long forgotten by most of the galaxy, but to those who remembered, he was a legend. The human commander, once feared and respected across galaxies, had been placed in cryosleep, frozen for a time that no longer existed. For thousands of years the world of humanity had faded, the last humans had died off, and Earth was now a distant memory. The human race, once at the pinnacle of technological and military achievement, had fallen into oblivion, but one remained. The commander, the greatest of them all, still rested, awaiting the day when the galaxy would need him again. That day had come, Limeruyella. The Galactic Union, made up of a vast and diverse collection of species, was facing an unprecedented threat. An enemy unlike any they had encountered before, a force so powerful that all attempts to repel it had failed. The Union's defenses, once thought unbreakable, were now crumbling, and panic spread across the stars. The leaders of the Union sat in their Grand Council chamber, their discussions filled with frustration and fear. They had lost the upper hand. Peaceful negotiations had failed, and their last line of defense had been crushed. The only option left was one they had hoped never to use. A large glass display hovered before them, showing the cryo chamber where the human commander had been preserved. "Do we really need to do this?" one of the councillors asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. He was from the Dalari Alliance, a species known for their logical thinking and cautious approach to conflict. "Can we not find another way?" "No," came the firm reply from the Varnok representative, a towering creature with crystalline skin. "This is our only chance. We need the commander, the human who defeated armies and fleets in the past. We need him to fight this war for us." A quiet murmur ran through the chamber, the words, "human commander," carrying weight and history. Despite humanity's extinction, the stories of their military prowess had spread across the stars. They had been the strongest, the most fearsome. Now their greatest warrior was the galaxy's last hope. "We cannot risk waiting any longer," the voice of the High Chancellor, a being of light and energy, broke through the murmurs. "We will activate the cryo chamber. The human commander will awaken." There was no turning back now. The decision had been made. The chamber grew quiet as the ancient cryo machines powered on. The soft blue light filled the room as a low hum echoed through the air. One by one the machines inside the chamber began to reactivate, their systems humming to life. It had been thousands of years since humanity had seen war, but their commander would rise again. For better or worse, the galaxy was about to face its most dangerous weapon. The chamber was filled with the voices of alien leaders from across the galaxy, their faces a strange and diverse mix of shapes, colors and sizes. They sat on sleek, floating platforms in a large circular room, the center dominated by the holographic display of the cryo chamber. Each delegate represented a powerful faction in the Galactic Union, races that had once been bitter enemies but had come together for peace and prosperity. But peace, as it turned out, was fragile. The invasion force was unlike any threat they had faced before. They had thought their advanced technology, their military might, and their unity would protect them, but the enemy was relentless, pushing their borders and annihilating anyone who stood in their way. The Galactic Union was on the verge of collapse. "I am telling you," said Councillor Rither, a short, stocky alien with 4 arms, his voice quivering. "We cannot afford to wait. The invasion is nearly upon us. We must unfreeze him, the human commander. He is our only hope." The representatives of the Union's factions exchanged uneasy glances. A few nodded, others hesitated. There was a deep unease among them. To trust in a human warrior again, after all this time, was unthinkable to some. "But what if it's a mistake?" asked Princess Vexia, the delicate-looking bioluminescent representative of the Jigsaw species. The human race was destructive. Their wars nearly ended the galaxy. Do we want to risk unleashing such power again? A low growl emanated from the Gernok delegate, a towering reptilian creature. The humans were never destructive in the way we've seen these invaders. They fought for survival, for the galaxy, not to conquer or destroy it. He fixed Vexia with a sharp gaze. "We need the commander, and you know it." There was a long pause before High Chancellor Therix, the shimmering being of light who led the council, spoke. "Enough. The decision has already been made. The cryochamber will be activated. But we must be prepared for the consequences. We do not know what the human commander will be like after so many years. What he was in the past may not be what he is now." The murmurs in the chamber quieted as the High Council continued to discuss their plan, but there was no denying the tension that hung in the air. Everyone was now looking to the human commander, the last remaining symbol of a race that had shaped galactic history. And now, they would need to rely on him to save them from certain destruction. The hum of the cryochamber echoed louder, almost in rhythm with the hearts of the council members. The room was thick with anticipation. The decision had been made, but it felt like an irreversible step, one that could either save the galaxy or lead to unforeseen consequences. The High Chancellor stood at the front of the room, glowing softly, his light flickering as the cryochamber powered up. The enormous, sealed glass tube hummed with energy, the systems running diagnostics, calibrating, and finally preparing to wake the last human. A soft beep sounded, followed by a loud hiss as the cryopod slowly opened, revealing the human commander, still encased in the frosty blue liquid. His once vibrant eyes were now closed, his body frozen in time, but there was no mistaking his presence. Even in his dormant state, he exuded a sense of power, an energy that seemed to fill the room. "Activate the cryogenic unfreeze," Therix commanded. His voice echoed through the chamber, the directive clear. The technicians did their work quickly, their hands moving swiftly over controls. The blue liquid began to drain, and the human commander's body was gently lifted, suspended in a field of energy. The air grew still, as everyone waited. Time seemed to slow, and for the first time they wondered if their decision had been right. The human commander's eyes fluttered open. A sharp gasp escaped from several of the alien leaders. His gaze was piercing, his eyes holding a depth that spoke of countless battles fought, of years spent in cryosleep. He blinked, adjusting to the light around him. His face remained unreadable. "Who are you?" The voice that broke the silence was calm, low, and commanding, as though nothing had changed, despite the millennia that had passed. "We are the Galactic Union," Therix began, stepping forward, his voice filled with both authority and hesitation. "We need your help, Commander. Our galaxy faces an existential threat, and we have no other choice but to wake you." The human didn't respond immediately. He scanned the room, his gaze moving over the alien delegates. His eyes landed on the High Chancellor last, and he seemed to recognize something in the being's form, an ancient wisdom that transcended species. Finally, he spoke. "You woke me up because you think I can still fight." His tone was a mix of disbelief and indifference. "I haven't fought in centuries. The wars I fought, the battles I led, they're all buried now. Humanity is gone, and yet, you want me to fight your battles?" There was a long pause before Therix replied, his voice filled with urgency. "You were humanity's greatest commander, the one who led us to victory. The galaxy remembers your strength. We believe that, even after all this time, your skills are unmatched." The human commander's gaze softened for the first time, but it was short-lived. His eyes were now focused, calculating. "I was a weapon, a tool of war. I never fought for glory or recognition. I fought to protect those who couldn't protect themselves." Another long silence stretched between them. The chamber felt tense, charged with the weight of his words. "You may have woken me up for a reason," the commander said slowly. "But you're going to regret it. I won't fight for your political games or power struggles. I fight for survival. And that's not something I'll do on your command." He crossed his arms over his chest and stared at the Union leaders, the weight of his words settling heavily in the room. It was clear, this human was not the mindless soldier they had imagined. He was a leader, a strategist, one who had seen the worst of the universe and was now the only hope they had. The room was filled with unease as the High Chancellor took a step forward. "We're not asking for a mindless soldier, Commander. We are asking for a hero. A force that can lead us into victory against the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known. Will you help us?" The commander's eyes narrowed, and for the first time since he had awoken, he let out a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Let's see if you're right. But I warn you, I don't follow anyone's orders. I lead my own way." The human commander, now fully awake and standing tall in the center of the Galactic Union's council chamber, couldn't help but feel the weight of 1,000 lifetimes pressing down on him. The galaxy had changed so much since his time, and yet in many ways it felt eerily familiar. The political games, the power struggles, the desperate need for a hero, he had seen it all before, and it had cost him everything. He turned away from the council, walking slowly to the window of the chamber. His eyes, sharp and calculating, took in the view of the stars, distant and cold. A deep, aching silence filled the room as the delegates watched him. They were waiting for his decision. The fate of the galaxy rested in his hands now. But the question gnawed at him. Was he still the man he used to be? Could he still be that leader, that warrior, in a galaxy that had long since moved on without him? "What do you want from me?" His voice broke the silence, and the council members flinched. It was a quiet, simple question, but one that carried the weight of centuries of war, loss, and regret. "You are humanity's last hope," Theric said cautiously. "We need your guidance, your experience. You are the finest military commander in all of galactic history." The commander turned back to face the council. His face was unreadable, but his eyes betrayed a sense of weariness. "You're wrong," he said flatly. "I was the finest weapon in history. I fought wars that destroyed worlds, that left nothing but death in their wake. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't a leader. I was a soldier. A tool of destruction. And I have no interest in being used like that again." Theric opened his mouth to argue, but the commander held up his hand, silencing him. "No, let me finish. You woke me up because you think I can save you. You think I can do what I did in the past and lead you to victory. But what if I've changed? What if I'm not the man you think I am? What if I can't fight like I once did?" There was a long pause. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. They had expected strength, confidence, not doubt. The commander's uncertainty wasn't what they had hoped for, but it was exactly what he had feared. He wasn't the man who had once led armies to victory. He was a broken, forgotten relic of a time long past, and the weight of his own history crushed him. "I don't even know who I am anymore," he muttered, his voice soft but filled with regret. "I wake up to a galaxy that's not mine, a world where humanity is gone. What do I have left to fight for?" Lena, one of the Union's top strategists, stepped forward. Her voice was gentle, understanding. "You fight for the galaxy. For everyone who still lives. Humanity's legacy lives on in us all. You're not just a weapon. You're a symbol of hope, of survival. You still have a place here." The commander looked at her, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Hope? Regret? Longing? It was hard to tell. "Maybe," he whispered. "Maybe you're right." But his voice didn't carry the same conviction it once had. There was a lingering hesitation, a shadow of the man who had fought so many battles. He had seen the worst of war, and he wasn't sure he could face it again. As he stood there, lost in his thoughts, the council waited. There were no easy answers. There was no quick solution. The commander was torn between the need to fight, because that's all he had ever known, and the realization that his very existence had been reduced to a tool of war. He wasn't sure if he could go back to that life. The life. Fital the his past and his future were now tied together. But was he still that man? Was he still capable of leading? The Finally he looked up at the council, his face hardening into the same expression they had heard so many stories about. "I will fight for you. For the galaxy. But know this, I won't do it your way, I'll do it my way, the only way I know." Therix's eyes widened, a mixture of fear and respect flashing across his face. "Your way? What does that mean?" The commander's lips curled into a faint, dangerous smile. "It means you better be ready to follow orders. My orders. The moment you doubt my methods, we'll be done." Lena exchanged a glance with Therix, both recognizing the weight of what the commander had just said. He was no ordinary leader. He wasn't going to play by the rules of the Galactic Union. He was going to bring the fight to them, and he would lead however he saw fit. Whether they liked it or not. Halaisi. The human commander, now more resolved in his decision, turned to face the 5 alien representatives assigned to assist him. They were a diverse group, each one a representative of a different species, each with their own unique strengths and, at times, glaring weaknesses. The Union had gathered them, believing that their collective abilities would form the key to surviving the looming invasion. The first was Scar, a hulking, reptilian creature from the Varnock Dominion, whose strength was legendary. His scales shimmered in the low light of the chamber, and his eyes were cold and calculating. The second was Lena, the strategist, a member of the Zixa species, whose intelligence and foresight had saved her people countless times. Her delicate bioluminescent skin gave her a deceptive appearance of fragility, but her mind was sharp, cutting through challenges with surgical precision. Then there was Razor, a sleek, agile being from the Aetheri tribe. The Aetheri were renowned for their speed and stealth, often acting as spies and assassins, and Razor embodied every trait of his kind. His face was hidden behind a translucent visor, and his movements were smooth and fluid, like liquid in motion. Thrak, a towering figure from the Grothar hegemony, looked like nothing less than a walking mountain. His thick, boulder-like skin was nearly impervious to most attacks, and his brute strength made him a terrifying force in battle. His deep, rumbling voice was always calm, but you could feel the intensity in every word. Finally, there was Isha, a soft-spoken, alien engineer from the Dollar Collective, a race known for their technological prowess. Though small in stature, she had a mind capable of designing the most complex machines and weapons. Her hands were always in motion, calibrating or repairing the tech around them. The human commander stood before them, eyes scanning each of them carefully. He had been briefed on their capabilities, but as he had learned in his years of battle, it wasn't always the strongest or the smartest that won wars. It was the one who could outthink the enemy and make the best decisions under pressure. "You are here because the Union believes you can help me," the human began, his voice flat but firm. "But I don't need help. I need soldiers who can follow orders. You all have your skills, and they're useful, but I will be in charge of this operation, and my methods are non-negotiable." He paused, letting that sink in. The alien representatives exchanged uncertain glances. The human wasn't joking. This wasn't going to be a polite cooperation. "I'm not here to coddle you, and I'm not here to make friends," he continued. "We will fight together, or we will die apart. I won't waste time debating tactics. We'll fight my way, simple, brutal, and effective." Scar, the Varnock warrior, stepped forward. His deep voice rumbled as he spoke. "You say that you'll lead, human, but we have our own methods. We don't take orders lightly. Our people don't bow to outsiders." The human commander stared him down, unwavering. "Then you're free to leave, but if you're here to follow my plan. If you can't stomach that, there's the door. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything for you." Lena, the strategist, watched the exchange closely. Her voice was measured, calm. "I believe what the commander is saying, Scar. We've seen what happens when leadership falters. The battle for survival will not be won through pride, but through cooperation. We must do this his way, or we'll lose before we even begin." Razor, who had been standing in the back, stepped forward with a smirk. "I've always liked to challenge. What do you have in mind, human?" The human commander's lips curled into a small, grim smile. You'll find out soon enough. Thrak remained silent for a moment before speaking, his deep voice like the rumble of distant thunder. I fight, I follow orders. If you can bring us victory, I'll follow you. Isha, the smallest of the group, was the last to speak. My people work with technology. If you need something built, I'm the one you'll want on your team. But be warned, if I'm to help, I need resources and access. We can't fight this war without the right tools. The human commander nodded. I'll get you what you need, but only if you prove you can work under pressure. And just like that, a tense, unspoken agreement was formed. The team was assembled, and the human commander stood at the head, ready to lead them into battle, regardless of how many doubts and objections there were. They had no choice. The invasion was already at their door, and time was running out. He turned, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of the enemy's movements. We don't have the luxury of time. Prepare yourselves. This is going to get ugly. The first steps had been taken. A fractured team of alien species, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, was now under the command of a human who had been long forgotten. And together, they would face the galaxy's greatest threat. The galaxy, once thriving under the watchful eyes of the Galactic Union, was now on the brink of collapse. The invaders had arrived, an ancient, long-forgotten race with one goal: total domination. In the war room, the human commander stood before a massive holographic display, his sharp eyes scanning the swirling images of the enemy's movements. The hologram flickered, displaying an incoming fleet of ships that blotted out the stars, advancing quickly toward the Union's outermost colonies. The enemy's fleet was massive, far larger than anything the Union had ever faced. The Thraxians, the High Chancellor murmured from behind him, his voice filled with awe and fear. An ancient race. They were thought to be extinct, lost in the far reaches of the galaxy. But they've returned. The human commander's expression hardened. I remember the Thraxians. We fought them in the early days. Humanity's last great battle was against them. His tone was flat, emotionless, but the weight of his words hung in the air. The Thraxians were not just another hostile species. They were a terrifying force that had nearly wiped humanity from the galaxy. And now they were back, with even more advanced technology and a bloodlust for conquest. Why didn't we know about them sooner? Krellan, one of the alien warriors, growled, his voice full of frustration. How is it possible for them to remain hidden all this time? They were erased from history, the human commander replied, his eyes focused on the hologram. The Union, in its infinite wisdom, decided to wipe out all records of them, believing that humanity's war with the Thraxians was over. But there's one thing they didn't account for: the Thraxians don't die easily. The hologram flickered again, zooming in on the massive fleet now hovering at the edge of Union space. There were no flagships, no obvious sign of command. Just hundreds of ships, each one seemingly designed to outmatch anything the Galactic Union had. Their fleet is huge, the human commander muttered. But it's not the fleet we need to worry about. It's the Thraxians themselves. The image shifted, and a smaller display appeared, showing what looked like a Thraxian warrior, tall, heavily armored, and imposing. Their bodies were armored with dark, reflective plating, and their eyes glowed with a faint, eerie light. Their weapons were advanced, capable of destroying entire planets with a single shot. Those are the Thraxian warlords, the human commander explained, his voice low. We encountered them before and they almost wiped us out. They are merciless, strategic, and utterly ruthless. They don't just want to conquer, they want to break you. And when they do, they enslave whatever's left. Lena, the strategist, stepped forward, her eyes calculating. What's their weakness? What can we use against them? The human commander paused, his eyes narrowing. We didn't find a weakness the last time we fought them, we just barely survived. But one thing I know, every enemy has a weakness. We just need to find it. The High Chancellor was visibly shaken. You say barely survived? If we're being honest, Commander, we don't have the resources or time to repeat history. We need a plan now. The human commander turned toward the display. The fleet was closer now, their shadow hanging over the Union's territories like a death sentence. Here's the plan, the commander said, his voice calm but cold. We hit them where it hurts. We don't fight them head on. That's suicide. We need to disrupt their command, their leadership. We need to break their morale. That's how we beat them the first time. The room fell silent as the alien leaders processed his words. How do we disrupt a fleet like that? Scar, the Varnock warrior, asked. The human commander's lips twitched into a grim smile. We make them think they're already losing. The war room was silent, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on every member of the Galactic Union's council. The Thraxians, once thought extinct, were now bearing down on the galaxy with a vengeance. The Union had barely managed to hold its ground in past skirmishes, but the human commander knew that their tactics, their technology, and their way of life weren't enough to win. They needed something more. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, the commander said, his voice steady as he addressed the room. The Thraxians are powerful, and their fleet is unlike anything you've ever seen. But we have something they don't. Us. He paused, letting that sink in. The alien leaders exchanged uncertain glances. They had seen the commander's skill, his confidence, but could they really trust him to lead them to victory? The stakes were higher than ever before. We're going to break them, the commander continued, his gaze unwavering. But not in the way you're thinking. We're not going to attack head-on. We're not going to engage them in open combat. Not yet. That's a losing battle. But what do you propose? Asked Thrak, the towering Gruthar warrior. His voice was filled with doubt but tinged with respect. How do we defeat an enemy we can't even match? We're going to divide them, the commander replied simply. The Thraxians are an empire built on fear and control. Their strength comes from their ability to command and to crush their enemies. But fear is brittle, and control is fragile. If we can break their leadership, we can break their entire fleet. Scar, the Varnock warrior, leaned forward. You want us to assassinate their leaders? The commander nodded. Exactly. We're going to target the Thraxian warlords, the ones who are leading this invasion. If we can disrupt their command structure, if we can make them believe their empire is falling apart, we'll break their will to fight. And then, when they're vulnerable, we strike. Lena, the strategist, watched him closely, clearly impressed by his plan. A psychological strike. You're saying we attack their morale, not their fleet? Exactly, the commander confirmed. The Thraxians are brutal, yes, but they're also prideful. They thrive on dominance and fear. If we can turn that fear against them, they'll crumble. Isha, the engineer, raised her hand hesitantly. And how do we even get close to their leaders? Their warlords don't show weakness, and their fleets are too well guarded. The commander smiled, the first genuine smile he'd shown since waking up. That's where we come in. We're going to infiltrate. I've already begun working on the plan. We'll use stealth, misdirection, and precision strikes. We'll slip in, hit them where it hurts, and slip out before they even realize what happened. The High Chancellor stepped forward, concern still clouding his face. What makes you so sure it will work? The human commander's eyes darkened. Because we fought the Thraxians before, and we're not going to repeat the mistakes of the past. This time we're going to fight smarter, not harder. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of his words settling in. Then, Scar spoke again. What do we need from us? First, we need to work together. No more egos, no more rivalries, the commander said, his voice now commanding. Each of you has a role to play. Scar, your strength will be needed when we make our move on the ground. Rhea, your speed and stealth will be key to infiltrating their ranks. Lena, I need you to stay on top of their movements and plan the escape routes. Isha, we need your tech to bypass their security systems. He turned toward Thrak. And Thrak, I'll need you to act as my backup. You're going to help lead the team into position when we go in for the strike. Thrak's face twisted into a grin. Sounds like a plan. I'll follow you, human. I'm not afraid of a fight. The commander looked over his team, a sense of resolve settling over him. Good. This is our only shot. We're going to take down the Thraxians. But we need to work together, and we need to move fast. He turned back to the hologram of the enemy fleet, his expression hardening. Once we disrupt their leadership, we'll attack their fleet with everything we've got. But that's a battle we'll win on our terms, not theirs. We're not playing by their rules. There was a new fire in his eyes, an unmistakable confidence that had been missing until now. The human commander had taken control, and his plan was set into motion. The human commander stood in front of a war map, the alien team now fully assembled. His mind was sharp, calculating every angle. Each move had to be precise. There was no room for mistakes. He had led armies before, but this mission was different. These were not human soldiers. These were alien species, each with their own tactics, cultures, and ideologies. Yet, despite their differences, they were his team now. "Listen up," he began, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "I know you all have your ways of doing things, but this mission isn't about personal pride. It's about survival. We work as one or we don't work at all." Scar, the Varnock warrior, crossed his arms. "We fight, as we always have. Strength first. Anything else is weakness." The human commander locked eyes with him. And that's exactly what the Thraxians are counting on. They know how to fight strength with strength. But we won't play their game. We fight smarter, not harder. Lena, the strategist, spoke up next. "What's your plan, Commander? You've mentioned the leadership strikes, but we need more details. We can't act without knowing the exact positions of their warlords." The commander tapped a few buttons on the console, bringing up a series of encrypted maps. "I've been tracking the Thraxians' movements for the past few days. We know where their leaders are. They're holed up in fortified strongholds, but they're not expecting us to attack them directly. That's our advantage." Razor, the Ethery, shifted his stance, his voice soft but with a sharp edge. "And you expect us to infiltrate these strongholds? How exactly are we going to get past their defenses?" "I've already accounted for that," the commander replied, turning to face Razor. "We'll use misdirection. We know they rely heavily on their surveillance systems. Isha, you'll disable their security grids while Razor sneaks in. Your team will create distractions while we target the warlords." Razor nodded. "You want me to get in close, use my speed, get the job done without being seen?" "Exactly," the commander affirmed. "Once we're inside, the rest of you will create chaos. Scar, Thrak, you'll provide cover for Razor. Draw their forces away from the warlords. Make them think they're under attack. Force them to focus on you while Razor gets the real work done." "I'm no stranger to chaos," Scar grinned, cracking his knuckles. "Let's show them how the Varnock fight." The human commander nodded approvingly. "That's the spirit. We'll make them believe they're being overwhelmed. Then hit them where it hurts." The room grew quiet as the plan began to take shape. Isha, the engineer, moved to her console, already setting up her work. "I'll need precise coordinates for their security systems, Commander. If I'm to bypass them, I'll need everything mapped out." "I'll handle that," Lena interjected. "I've been tracking their comms. I'll feed you the coordinates once we're ready." The commander looked at the team, the gravity of the situation settling in. "We move fast, we move together, we don't have the luxury of time. If this works, we take down their leadership and send them a message. If it doesn't, we make sure they remember our name." Scar let out a low growl, his eyes alight with battle fervor. "I've been waiting for this." The human commander turned to face him, his expression hardening. "Get ready. This war is about to change." The final push was underway. The human commander stood at the front of his team, his eyes scanning the holographic map once more. The invasion fleet had been stalled, but the Thraxians' warlords were still well protected in their fortresses across the galaxy. The next phase of the plan was crucial: take down their leadership without triggering a full-scale confrontation. If they could disrupt their control, the Thraxian forces would collapse from within. "This is it," the human commander said, his voice calm, but filled with the resolve of a man who had seen the worst of battles. "No room for error. Scar, Thrak, your job is to provide a distraction, draw their forces out, keep them busy. Lena, Razor, Isha, you're on the ground. Once we've disabled their security systems, it's all on you." His alien team nodded in unison. They were ready. The human strategy was simple: misdirection and precision strikes. The enemy's weaknesses had been found. They had learned their patterns, their habits. The key was to hit them where it hurt most, by targeting their leaders. If they could kill or capture the Thraxian warlords, the invasion would lose its backbone. Without their leadership, the Thraxians would have no direction. They would fall apart. The team split up, each one heading to their assigned position. Scar and Thrak made their way to the front lines, their heavy armor and brute strength, a perfect fit for the distraction mission. Razor, agile and quick, disappeared into the shadows, preparing to infiltrate the first warlord's fortress. Lena and Isha worked together to ensure the security grids would fall, their combined technological expertise feeding them the intel they needed. The human commander stood back, his arms crossed. He watched as his team moved into position, and for a moment, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride. These aliens, once strangers, once competitors, were now working as one under his leadership. The bonds of camaraderie had been formed, and there was no turning back. For the first time since waking up, the human commander allowed himself a small smile. This was his purpose, his legacy. Leading these diverse species to victory against a threat that would otherwise destroy them all, the countdown to the attack began. 5 minutes, Lena's voice crackled through the comms. "Security grids are almost down. You're good to go." Razor's voice followed. "Entering the warlord's fortress." "I'm in position." "Good. It's showtime," the commander said, his voice cold and focused. The battle began with fury. Scar and Thrak charged into the front lines, their war cries echoing across the battlefield. The Thraxian soldiers, caught off guard by the sudden onslaught, tried to retaliate, but the two alien warriors were too powerful. Scar ripped through enemy forces with his 4 massive arms, while Thrak's indestructible skin absorbed the enemy's fire, allowing him to crush the attackers beneath his fists. Meanwhile, Razor infiltrated the Thraxian fortress, his movements swift and silent. He evaded security systems with ease, his ethery agility making him a ghost in the shadows. He reached the warlord's command center, taking out the guards quietly, and setting up the explosive charges that would bring the fortress to its knees. Lena and Isha worked in perfect unison, hacking into the central systems and shutting down the Thraxian security grids, causing widespread confusion among the enemy's forces. The disruption spread like wildfire, and soon, the Thraxians had no idea where the attack was coming from. The human commander watched all of this unfold from his command post, his focus unwavering. This was his moment. Everything had led to this final strike. And then, it was time to deliver the final blow. Liskeln. The final strike was in motion, but it wasn't going as planned. The human commander had expected chaos, expected uncertainty, but nothing could have prepared him for the chaos that would follow once they breached the Thraxian fortress. Razor had planted the explosive charges, but when they detonated, the expected collapse didn't happen. The explosion triggered a hidden defense system, an impenetrable energy shield, sealing off the command center and trapping Razor and the human commander's team inside. The Thraxians knew they had been compromised. The final plan, the assassination of their warlords, was now a race against time. The forces surrounding the fortress were growing stronger by the minute. In the chaos, the commander's voice cut through the communication lines, calm as ever, despite the panic surrounding him. "Razor, report," the commander demanded, his voice sharp and authoritative. "I'm trapped. The shields are up and the exits are sealed. I can't get out." Razor's voice was tinged with frustration. "We need to find another way." The human commander glanced around the battlefield, calculating. This was no longer about taking out the warlords. It was about survival. For all of them. "We can't let them escape. Razor, get out of there. Now. We'll find another way to stop them. I've got this under control." The confidence in his voice was clear, though inside he knew the odds were slim. "What do you mean you've got this?" Scar's voice crackled through the comms. "You're outnumbered. The rest of us are locked down." "Not anymore," the commander replied, turning his gaze to his team. His eyes narrowed as he saw their position becoming more desperate. "Waha, sarina khatal anukharahi, kamashi isosalaha, mashiyel anukharahi, dolia las fasalaha." The human's decision was made. He wasn't going to let his allies die for him. He was the one who had woken up for this moment, and if it meant making the ultimate sacrifice, then so be it. The human commander made his way to the core of the fortress, moving swiftly and silently. The enemy forces were closing in, but he had no fear. He had done this before. His experience was invaluable, but now it would be his courage that would win the day. The command center was just ahead. The warlord was there, waiting. The human commander could feel the enemy's presence. He had no backup, no more time for tricks. This was it. He would end the fight here. "Wallah Aman." Razor's voice interrupted his thoughts. "You don't have to do this alone." The commander paused. "I've never been alone, Razor. Trust me, you've all learned what you needed. This is my fight now." With the flick of a switch, the commander's suit activated its self-destruct mechanism, a device he had rigged for situations just like this. If he couldn't get out, if he couldn't complete the mission, then he would take down the Thraxian leadership, and with it, their invading force. "Just make sure you finish the fight," the commander said with grim resolve. Razor's voice came through weakly. "Wait, you can't." But the commander had already initiated the countdown. He took a deep breath, staring at the fortress door. Behind it, the Thraxian warlord waited, unaware that his reign was about to end. The door slid open, revealing the warlord sitting on a throne-like chair, massive and imposing, his eyes glowing with a fiery, predatory gleam. The commander took a step forward. "I'm sorry, it has to be this way." The warlord let out a mocking laugh. "You really think you can kill me, human?" The commander said nothing. He moved quickly, striking first with a knife, a sharp, precise blow. The warlord barely had time to react. The human commander had always been quicker than anyone realized. Before the warlord could raise his weapon, the human commander delivered a fatal blow, plunging the blade into his heart. With a final gasp, the warlord fell to the floor, lifeless. The fortress shook, alarms blaring. The countdown had hit its final seconds. The human commander stood over the body of the warlord, chest heaving. The mission was complete. He had finished his duty. The galaxy would be saved. The dust settled quickly after the explosion. The shockwave rocked the Thraxian fortress, throwing the invading forces into disarray. The commander's final act had ensured the galaxy's survival, but it had come at a cost. The high-pitched hum of collapsing energy shields, the fading cries of Thraxian soldiers, and the eerie silence after the blast were all that remained. Razor and the rest of the team rushed to the control room, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that the commander was gone. The air was thick with grief, but there was also a strange sense of victory. They had done it. They had defeated the Thraxian warlords, and with them, the threat of invasion had been crushed. Razor approached the commander's body. His expression was unreadable, hidden behind the translucent visor. "We couldn't save him. But he saved us. He saved us all." Scar, the Varnok warrior, stood in the doorway, his massive frame casting a shadow over the group. He was a fool to do this alone, but he's a hero now. A legend. Lena, the strategist, approached the human commander's body with solemn reverence. A hero, yes, but not one who sought glory. He did what he had to, for the galaxy. For us. The human commander had been right in the end. They had been in over their heads, outmatched by an enemy they had underestimated. But his sacrifice had turned the tide. The Thraxians were leaderless, broken and scattered. The galaxy had been given another chance. Razor gently closed the commander's eyes, paying his respects. He died a soldier, a true warrior, a leader, and a human. The Thraxian threat had been eradicated, their invasion halted before it could fully take hold. In the aftermath, the Union celebrated, but it was a bittersweet victory. The human commander had given everything, and they would remember him as the savior of the galaxy. back at the Union headquarters, the High Chancellor called a special assembly. Delegates from every species, from the farthest reaches of space, gathered to honor the fallen commander. His name, once lost to history, would be written into the annals of the Union's new beginning. We stand here today because of one human sacrifice. The High Chancellor began, his voice heavy with emotion. The commander's actions will echo through the ages. His legacy is not just of war, but of hope. The hope that even in the darkest of times we can overcome, we can unite. A long pause followed as the delegates processed the weight of the words. The memory of the human commander, a once dominant figure in history, would live on. He had fought for survival, for those who couldn't fight for themselves, and in doing so, he had shown the galaxy what true courage and leadership meant. Though the commander was gone, his influence remained. His actions had forever altered the trajectory of the Union, pushing it to become a more unified, more resilient force in the galaxy. The lessons learned from his bravery, his leadership, and his willingness to sacrifice would guide the future of every species that had once feared or underestimated humanity. Years later, a memorial was erected in his honor. It stood on a thriving planet, the center of galactic commerce, a place where all species could come together and remember the human who had saved them. The inscription on the monument read, "For the last human, the commander who gave his life to save the galaxy. His legacy lives in all of us." The galaxy had moved on from the war with the Thraxians, but one thing remained constant, the memory of the human commander. He had awakened for one purpose, to lead, to fight, and ultimately, to save the galaxy. His legacy was now etched in history, but there was one more thing to reveal. It wasn't long after the victory that a discovery was made on the human commander's ship. A small, encrypted device, hidden deep in the ship's databanks. It was an ancient message, one that the commander had recorded long before his cryosleep. The Union's top scientists worked tirelessly to decrypt it, and once they finally succeeded, the message was revealed to the public. The holographic projection of the human commander appeared in front of the council, his face serious, but with a slight smile, as though he knew exactly what was coming. "Hello," the human's voice echoed throughout the room. "If you're hearing this, then I'm dead, or at the very least, I'm long gone. It's been a long road, far longer than I ever imagined, but if there's one thing I've learned in all my years of fighting, it's this. A leader doesn't just fight for the people. A leader fights for the future." The human commander's hologram paused, as though he were gathering his thoughts. "You might be wondering why I made the sacrifice I did. You might even be asking yourselves why I, the last of humanity, would fight for a galaxy that was no longer mine to protect. But the truth is, this galaxy, this whole damned universe, it's bigger than any one race, any one species, or any one individual. It's about survival. And survival doesn't come through domination or conquest. It comes through unity." He chuckled softly, shaking his head. I know. Some of you will roll your eyes and say, how can unity save us? Trust me, I didn't always think that way. But I've seen the worst of this universe. The wars, the chaos, the destruction. And I've seen what happens when people, when races come together, despite their differences. The hologram's eyes grew more intense as he continued, his voice firm. "You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to agree on everything. But in the end, you need to work together. You need to fight for each other, for the future. And that's the true victory." The hologram paused again, and the message shifted tone. A soft smile crept onto his face as he said, "When I was awake, I thought I was fighting for humanity. But when I went into cryosleep, I realized something important. I wasn't fighting for humanity. I was fighting for everyone who would come after. The future, no matter who it belonged to, was worth fighting for. It was worth saving." The hologram flickered, its tone turning more reflective. "And you're not alone. You'll never be alone. I may be gone, but the idea of humanity, the strength, the resilience, the will to fight, will never die. It's in all of you now." The message concluded with a final, heartfelt line. "I hope you all make the most of it. Farewell, and may you never forget that even in the darkest times, there's always hope." The galaxy stood in silence. Narrated, the message from the past had left a lasting impact. The human commander's words resonated deeply with every species in the galaxy, uniting them in a way that was both surprising and powerful. His belief in unity, in the potential for all races to come together despite their differences, had become the foundation for the future. The Galactic Union, once fractured by political strife and distrust between species, began to heal. His sacrifice had brought about a change in how the galaxy viewed itself, no longer divided by race or history, but united in the goal of survival and mutual respect. The legacy of the human commander lived on, not just in monuments or statues, but in the hearts and minds of every being across the galaxy. And while the galaxy had been forever changed by the invasion and the commander's ultimate sacrifice, it was his final message that continued to shape the future.